Cracking, everybody. Welcome back to the channel. New video. Today we're going to talk about Pelican Bay. It's Friday. I figure I'll do a Pelican Bay story. And this was inspired by a comment that was left on one of my videos. I don't know which video it was. I don't remember. But the other day, somebody made a comment. They left a comment. And it's funny how people allegedly hate me so much and my content is so horrible, and yet they can't stop watching, right? And they're willing to make a fool out of themselves just to leave a comment. So the person said something along the lines, I don't remember the whole thing, but he said something along the lines that he had been to Pelican Bay and that Pelican Bay was no different than any of the other ones, and that other ones were crazy. He named the other ones that they were crazy or this and that. And it was obvious to me he was either just straight up hating or had actually never been to the Bay. And so today, in this video, we're going to talk about one of the differences of the Bay compared to everywhere else. And I've mentioned it before. And for those of you that have never been to the California Department of Corrections, aren't from California, there are two different levels, or designs, I should say, to the maximum security level 4 yards in the California Department of Corrections. Level 4 is the highest one. Within the level 4s, there are two designated, two different designations. There's a 180 yard and there's a 270 yard. That basically just talks about the degrees of the line of sight within the housing unit. In a 270 building, you go in and you can see all three sections, A, B, and C. When you go into a 180 design prison, you walk in to the unit and you see a wall. You're in a rotunda. You're not in a rotunda in a 270. You walk in, you walk under the guard tower, and then you open up into a big day room. In a 180, you don't. It's very secure. So you would walk in and you'll see a door. There'll be a wall, and there'll be glass, and there'll be a door. That's one of the sections. Could be C section. And then you keep going in the rotunda, and then you'll see B section. You keep going and you'll see A section at the end. But each section is walled off. Each section cannot see each other. That's so there's less movement. It's more restricted. Now, the reason for the 180 and the 270 design prisons is this. When you get kicked out of the SHU, when they used to have the SHU in California, when you got kicked out of the SHU, you had to do 3 years. You had to go 3 years on a level 4 180 design prison before, and you had to go 3 years without a single write-up. If you got a write-up, your 3 years started over again. You had to give them 3 years without any trouble. And if you were able to do that, then you can go to a 270. Because if you still had level 4 points, you can go to 270 yard, right? So the 180s are SHU kickout yards. Now, all of them are. So when they talk about, oh, this no different than any other 180, this and that, that's a bunch of crap. And I'll say this. New Folsom and Pelican Bay were different. In the 90s, in New Folsom, there was usually always a legend, minimum one legend in the hole in New Folsom. And so B facility had to be run with the knowledge that, hey, there's somebody right down the street that people can get at, and that's keeping tabs. All the other yards, they can kind of get away with doing a little bit different stuff because there isn't somebody in the back, somebody in the ad seg that's monitoring who's coming in, why are they coming in, and hearing the stories. How is it out there? Pelican Bay, unlike any joint, you had the SHU there. You could be on A facility or B facility, which was the general population yards, and go to the specialty clinic, what they call the specialty clinic, like for x-rays or whatever, physical therapy, and you go in, you get put in a holding cage, and there could be 3 or 4 legends right there. And when you get there, I mean, they're gonna ask you, hey Holmes, what yard you coming off of? And they're gonna ask you things, and they get first-hand knowledge immediately. So when people say, it was no different, that's a hater right there. People that were never in the Bay always had a complex. Not all of them, but a lot of political cats, if they had never been to the Bay, they just went to Corcoran. Some of them had a chip on their shoulder because they felt like the vatos that had gone to the Bay thought they were better than them. It's not that they thought they were better than them. They just got a different education. Obviously, because you're sitting with so many of them and you're learning directly from them. So how you conduct yourself, the type of education that you have is going to be different, right? Now, I have an older homeboy, and I've told stories about him before. And when we were in New Folsom, we were cellies for a little while, right? And he's the one I told you guys about in a video. He owed some money. And they approached me like I was going to pay his debt. And I was like, whack him. He's my older homeboy. He grew up with my dad, right? He had started doing time in the 70s. So I told the fellas that came and approached me about him, I was like, hey, Holmes, if it would have been anybody else, you'd whack him. So why does he get favoritism? They're like, but the homie's been around since the 70s. I said, exactly. Then he knows better. I said, I ain't paying shit for that vato. I don't get high. I don't have nothing to do with that shit. They were like, damn, fool, you're cold. I said, no, I ain't. I'm treating him the way I would treat anybody, you know. But my homeboy had a habit of, hey, he was gonna get high whenever he wanted. And I remember another time he burned a homie. And I asked him about that. And a couple of us were there when I was like, hey, Holmes, what's up with the old boy? Eh? He's saying that you owe him some feria. And he said, I burn bitches. If you don't have the balls to collect, then you shouldn't be selling on these yards. He said, that dude's a bitch. He goes, and you guys can tell him that, which again, he was too comfortable knowing that the people in charge of that yard at the time had a lot of love for him. Well, we all wind up going to Pelican Bay. And he got out of the shoe month and a half before me. And he hits B facility. I get out. I hit B facility. And I see him. And I remember the first time when I got out of the fish roll, well, I was still on fish roll, but I got cleared for yard. I was like, yeah, I heard my homeboy so-and-so's here. And they were like, oh, yeah, he's right over there. And I go, where? And they go, he's on the pull-up bars. I was like, the pull-up bars? What? And I see him doing pull-ups across the yard, and he sees me and he dropped down and he waves like, so I'll see him, right? So I went over there and I was like, what's up, fool? I said, you work out now? And he's like, man. I said, you ain't high? And he told me straight out. He said, I will never get high on this yard. I said, why? He said, the dope is too hot and the yard is too political. By the dope being hot, that dope belongs to the legends. And that right there, for somebody that I know, he was a pig when it came to fucking getting high. And for him to say he isn't going to take any chances getting high on that yard, knowing the type of problems that will come with it, that's very clear. That yard's very different, right? And similar to High Desert and Pelican Bay were similar in this, but High Desert was different in that same breath. When I was in Pelican Bay, I had been on B facility. I believe I was on B facility 3 different times. And each time that I was on B facility in Pelican Bay, there were always plots on whoever had leadership. You had dudes, because the problem is you had so many guys coming from the shoe to the yards, whether it's A or B facility. You have them coming from the shoe out to that yard. And They were sent out there with an agenda. Only they know what the agenda is. And that agenda was formulated with legends that they were housed with. And not all legends get along. I'm not going to get into all that. And so you would have people plotting the downfall of other camaradas based on disputes that were above all of their pay grades. And so when I was in the Bay, I used to always take a back seat and watch and just take note of who was what, meaning who's a snake and who's a camarada. Don't get me wrong, they're all camaradas when they're politicking, but there's some that are for the people and there's others that are for self. And I always lean towards the ones that were for everybody. But you had to be able to pay attention and take note on who the snakes were, because you're going to see them in other joints and you got to be able to recognize them from a mile away. If not, you get caught up in their web. Now, High Desert used to have the same politicking where dudes were plotting, but in High Desert, because as I said, you didn't have legends there in the Ad Seg and the hole that you were going to have to answer to. There were dudes that would take a shot. They'd say, fuck it. There would be bloodshed. There would be turnover. There would be chaos. And that was always bad for business. But anyways, that's just a glimpse into the reality of being on a level 4 180. Why, to me, Pelican Bay was different. Why everyone had to be on their P's and Q's. And why other people were envious of those that came from there. It's my video for today, man. Hopefully you guys enjoyed it. Everybody, please be safe, be smart, and tell the ones you love that you love them. I'm out of here.